Don't be afraid.
I'm not afraid. It's the wizard who should be afraid of me.
Welcome back. This is part 2 of my deep dive into the original Wicked novel. If you haven't already, please go back and watch part 1 so that you can be caught up with the goings-on on the life of our alleged wicked witch, Elphaba Throp. But for those of you who don't want to click on part 1 or just, you're like, I don't care, just give me the TLDR. I'll also put a timestamp on the screen that you can skip to if you are already caught up. Anyway, here we go. Our witch Elphaba Throp is the eldest daughter of missionary parents Frex and Melina Throp. Melina is a party girl who loves to party, and Frex is a sanctimonious tool. They also have 2 other kids, a daughter named Nessa Rose, who is the fundiest fundie that ever fundied, and then a son named Shell. Elphaba, aka Elphie, attends Shia's university and becomes roommates with Glinda, and she picks up a few friends. Bach, a boy from Munchkinland, Tibbet and Crope,
Troy and Ahmed in the morning,
and a certain Vinkus prince named Fiyero. There's a goat professor named Dr. Dilliman who gets murdered. Glinda rebrands as
Glinda.
And quietly pines for Elphie. Elphie smells corruption in the Emerald City and drags Glinda with her to investigate. They meet the wizard, who, shocker, sucks. Elphie runs away. 5 years later, she and Fiyero reconnect, and she's now part of an animal liberation group, basically the Black Hand in pre-World War I Serbia, but make it Oz. Fiyero is married, but they start an affair anyway. They have sex every night like it's cardio. Then Elphie's big political plot goes sideways. She doesn't get her Gavrilo Prince moment. Fiyero ends up murdered by the Gale Force. Cue devastation, and cue the rest of our story.
Part 4. The Vinkus.
About 6.5, 7 years later, and Elphie is leaving the Montry after a stint of servitude. So the Montry has hired a caravan Uber driver named Otzi Manglehand to take Elphie to her next destination. Aspen. No, wait, that's not right. The Vinkus. I'm sorry, I got confused for a second. Otzi is getting paid a hefty pile of cash to take Elphie away, and at first she wonders why she's getting paid so much just to take one person with her. And then she comes across her answer sitting with a mountain of suitcases. Surprise! A little boy's coming along too, and his name is Liir. He's 6. I wonder whose kid that could be. Let's do some math. So Elphie's been at the Montry about 6.5, 7 years. This kid is 6. He's living with her. I think we know why Otzi's pay just tripled. During those years, Elphaba was in charge of nursing the sick at the Montry. She grew Fiyero for a long time, and one day, Troy...
My emotions!
Tibbet showed up deathly ill. He stayed there, and they reconnected while she cared for him. They reminisced about their days at Shiz, and in the process, she's finally started to come to terms with her grief, and after Tibbet passed away, it was time for Elphie to go. On the road, Liir picks up a stray dog and names him Kellyjoy. Yeah, some kids have to beg their parents for dogs. This kid just finds a dog on the road. And it's like, here, let's take him home with us. Sure, great kid. On the road, Elphaba meets Princess Nastoya of a tribe called the Scrow. Turns out, Princess Nastoya is actually an elephant in disguise. She's taken refuge with the Scrow to avoid the type animal pogrom. If you don't know what a pogrom is, according to Wikipedia, a pogrom is a violent riot incited with the aim of massacring or expelling an ethnic or religious group, usually applied to attacks on Jews. The term entered the English language from Russian to the late 19th and early 20th century attacks on Jews in the Russian Empire.
Retrospectively, similar attacks against Jews which occurred in other times and places were renamed pogroms. Nowadays, the word is used to describe publicly sanctioned purgative attacks against non-Jewish groups as well.
More fascism. Since Elphie is open to Nastoya the animal, they bond, and Nastoya offers Elphie the protection of the Scrow, and she sends her off with some crows. So because no road trip is really complete without picking up a bunch of stuff you don't need, Liir and Elphaba pick up an entire menagerie, including a snow monkey that they call Chistery, and some bees. along with the dog and the crows.
One eternity later.
Elphie finally arrives at Kiamo, where Fiyero's widow, Sarima, lives with their 3 kids, 2 sons, Liir, who is 12, and Manek, who is 11, and a daughter, Nor, who's 9. Lest we forget, Sarima's 5 sisters, the ones that Fiyero compared to a harem. They fucking hate Sarima, and their favorite hobby is to remind her on a daily basis how much they fucking hate her. They mostly hate her because Fiyero had the audacity to die, so now they're stuck at Kiamo, having to help Sarima raise her kids. The sisters don't even have names anymore. They're just called 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. I love my sister, but if I had to help her raise her kids and nobody called me by my name anymore, I'd be pissed too. So when Elphie and Liir show up at the door with their zoo, Sarima is fucking stoked. Finally, someone to talk to who she's not related to and who doesn't hate her guts. Girl, that's what therapy is for. Not your husband's baby mama. Okay, to be fair, Sarima has no idea that Elphie was banging her husband.
Bang, bang, bangity bang, I said bang, bang, bangity bang.
And I don't think she realizes that Liir is obviously Fiyero's. Sarima and Elphie meet in the main entryway of the castle, where Elphie tells her she's an old college friend of Fiyero's, but she doesn't want to give Sarima her name. Honey, you were more than that. Fiyero was between your legs every night for months. I think that kid is walking proof of it. Sarima invites her to stay for dinner, but Elphie declines. Sarima won't take no for an answer. In fact, she recognizes Elphie from Fiyero's descriptions from his time at Shiz. Sarima tries to strike up a conversation with her, but Elphie tries to steer the conversation her way by telling her that she thinks she's the cause of Fiyero's death. Well, you're not the only one, interrupted Sarima. It's a national pastime out here, blaming oneself for the death of a prince, an opportunity for public grieving and atonement, which I secretly believe people enjoy just a little bit. Elphie tries again to discuss the matter. Sarima brushes her off again, just telling her this is my house and I choose to hear what I want. And again, Elphie tries to unload on Sarima, explaining that she needs to be forgiven, but while dragging Elphie to the dining room, Sarima remembers Elphie's name and she says that she'll keep it a secret. Just having the kids and her sisters call her Auntie Guest. And the sisters don't waste this opportunity again to show Sarima how much they fucking hate her by giving her and Elphie death stares at the dinner table. Dinner's very awkward to say the least, but Sarima's just too busy thinking about how she'll finally have someone to bitch about her problems to. Oh, girl, please get a therapist now! I'm begging you. So Elphie and Liir stay at Kiamo for about a week before Sarima invites them to stay long term. Sarima's sisters are still bitches and they make fun of Elphie and Sarima behind their backs. While Elphie is trying to get Sarima to talk to her about Fiyero, Liir is happy to play with the older kids, but their idea of playing with Liir is torturing him, and Manek is the worst offender. At 11 years old, he's a little fucking psychopath in training. I get that an 11-year-old doesn't want to play with a 6-year-old for good reason, but Manek is really cruel to this kid. Like, he makes him cry any chance he gets. Nor is a couple years older than Liir, so she at least tries to play with him. Liir, even though he's the oldest, just goes along with whatever his brother wants to do. After they've been at Kiamo for several weeks, Elphie is surprised at the fickleness of mountain weather, saying she's shocked how early winter came. The passes are already closed for the season. I didn't expect to be here for a long time, Elphie said, twisting her head on her neck like a parrot and looking at Sarima in an odd way. I thought I would have a night or two, maybe 3, and I could find myself a hidey hole before winter set in, but I was working on the wrong calendar. I was thinking of how and when winter came to Shiz in the Emerald City, but you're 6 weeks ahead here. Head in autumn and behind in the spring, alas, said Sarima. Winter really just comes whenever it damn well pleases in the mountains, and really see nothing until you've experienced the months of January through April. The weather's maybe mild, and then it tricks you into believing that spring is right around the corner.
It's officially fake spring February in Denver, where winter tries to fool you into believing spring is right around the corner, when in reality it's just getting ready to throw the most slushy and miserable snowstorms at us for the next 2 months.
Elphie tries again again to talk about Fiyero with Sarima, but Sarima gets upset and lashes out. She goes on a rant about Sir Chuffrey, Glinda's husband / beard, and we learn that she thinks that he was responsible for Fiyero's death. But before Elphie can bring up this subject again, it's almost time for Oz Christmas, which makes Elphie depressed. She gets mad at the kids when they go into her room looking for some paper to draw on. And Elphie is so depressed that she mostly hides out until it's over. At Oz Christmas, all the kids get presents except for Liir. Poor kid. Sarima is also super depressed. Unbeknownst to her, it's for the same reasons as Elphie. So once the holiday is over, Elphie comes out of hiding and apologizes to the sister for losing it on them. They tell her it's okay. They say freaking out and being depressed are really just a frequent occurrence in their household at this time of year. Elphie then chooses this opportunity to start pumping the sisters for more information. She's trying to figure out why Sarima just goes ballistic at the mere mention of Fiyero's name. They spill the tea. Fiyero hadn't been home for several months, and in the spring, a colleague of his came to the house and told Sarima he had bad news. He insisted to Sarima that her sisters be present when he delivered the news for support. When everybody's there, he proceeds to tell them that he received a message that Fiyero had been murdered, and the address, unbeknownst to the colleague or Sarima and company, was Elphie's apartment. The body had been removed and the scene was covered in so much blood that no one could have reasonably survived without some kind of immediate medical attention. So after learning this, Sarima just went straight into denial. It wasn't until a full year passed, with no word or sight from Fiyero, that Sarima finally began to accept that he was dead. Elphie asks the sisters what she thinks happened to him, and they tell her Sarima is convinced that Fiyero was having an affair with Glinda. Oh, sweetie, no. One sister says that Sarima thinks Glinda's beard, excuse me, her husband, Sir Chuffrey, had Fiyero killed in revenge for an imaginary affair. The sisters believe otherwise. They're convinced that since he didn't want to sleep with them, there was no possible way he could be fucking someone else. Elphie again tries to bring up her association with Fiyero, but the sisters dismiss her in their one act of sisterly love they've displayed this entire time, and they don't let her continue. Later, Sarima and Elphie discover a book, which we learn is the Grimmerie, among Fiyero's things. Elphie kind of asks where it came from, and Sarima tells her that some old guy dropped it off and told her it was knowledge from another world. Elphaba thinks that this is horseshit, and she tells Sarima as much. And this leads them into a theological discussion where we learn that Sarima's idea of another world is heaven or the afterlife. And Elphie, who is a deconstructing fundy, just gets fucking annoyed by this idea. Since winter break is over, the kids have got to get an education. Their education consists of them being homeschooled by one of Sarima's sisters. As you probably guessed, the school of Kiamo dining room table is not a highly functioning institution. The curriculum involves the sister starting some lessons and then giving up because the kids are fucking crazy. Instead of doing anything that remotely resembles schoolwork, the kids just play hide and seek. The kids show Liir Fishwell in the castle and spy on Elphie giving Chistery some speech therapy. They think that this is the funniest thing ever when they go into Elphaba's room when she's not there to torture Chistery to get him to talk. And the older boys tease Liir, telling him that Chistery is his brother since Elphaba is his mother. She's crazy, said Manek knowledgeably. Everyone knows you can't teach an animal to talk. They were in the abandoned summer stable jumping off a loft. Do you really think she's magic? Said Manek to Liir. You know her better than any of us. She's your mother. She's my auntie, isn't she? Liir said. She's our auntie. She's your mother. I know, said Irji, pretending full immersion in the topic to avoid another jump. Liir is Chistery's brother. Liir is what Chistery was like before she taught him how to talk. You're a monkey, Liir! I'm not a monkey, said Liir. I'm not magic. Well, let's go ask Chistery, said Manek. Is this the day that Auntie has her coffee with Mama? Let's go see if Chistery has learned enough to answer words to some questions. One day the kids are playing hide and seek again instead of, I don't know, getting an education. Liir wants to tag along with the older boys, much to Manek's annoyance. Liir wants to tag along with his big brother, even if they don't know it. He hides near Manek and it annoys him because Liir keeps giving away their hiding spot. So what does he do? He convinces Liir to hide in the Fishwell. The fucking psychopath Manek leaves Liir there. Again, because he is a fucking psychopath child. The other kids keep going crazy and they keep going through Elphie's shit and bugging the crap out of her. Elphie has no qualms about telling Sarima her opinion, telling them that they should be in school. school. I think those children are ungovernable, Sarima. Oughtn't they be off to school? I agree with Elphie here. The kids really should be getting an education, and they're not getting one at the school of Kiamo Ko's dining room table. Sarima says she can't possibly do that because of all the Arjiki tribesmen that want to have their heads or something like that. Oh yes, in a better life they would be, but how can they, said their mother placidly. I've already told you, they're sitting targets for the ambitious Arjiki tribesmen. It's bad enough to let them run around the slopes near Kiamo Ko in the summer. I never know when they're going to be found trussed and bled like a pig and brought home for burying. It's the cost of widowhood, Auntie. We must do the best we can. This is maybe mild spoilers for later in the story, but we learn that the Arjikis are people that are really community oriented and they protect their own. I don't think they would have tried to have their heads. Elphie doesn't buy this bullshit excuse, and she tells Sarima how when she was a kid she had to take care of her brother and sister, and talks about how she was dragged around doing missionary shit for her father. I was a good child, Elphaba said stoutly. I took care of my little sister, who was horribly disfigured from birth. I obeyed my father and my mother until she died. I tramped around as a missionary child and gave testimonials to the unnamed God, even though I was essentially faithless. I believed in obedience. Girl, again, you're describing parentification, but Elphie clearly doesn't understand that that's what was happening, and she just makes excuses about it. Sarima waxes poetic about kids. Oh, children are good at heart, said Sarima. They're so innocent and gay. It cheers me up to see them dashing about this house and this game or that, and all too soon those precious days will be past, dear Auntie. And she waxes on some more about Oz's own Anastasia Romanov. Princess Ozma. You know little Ozma, who all those years ago was deposed by the wizard. They say that she is off someplace frozen in a cave, perhaps even in the Kells, for all I know. One day she'll come back and rule Oz, and she'll be the best and wisest sovereign we've ever had because of the wisdom of youth. Just overthrow the fucking monarchy and just install a democracy already. When Sarima jabs back with, well, how do you judge Liir? Elphie stops talk. I'm still on Elphie's side, though, because they're not getting any real education and they're stuck at home all the time. And of course they're bored and acting out. And this isn't about Elphie's parenting flaws. It's about her pointing out that the children need something that they're not getting. She's wanting to ask, you're wanting to know if he's his mother. You know the answer. She is his mother. If you ask her that, you're going to have to ask her, well, who's his father? And you're not going to like the answer. The kids seem to get that Liir is Elphie's son, but none of the adults seem to get this. They're like, I don't know, he's not green, so he can't be her son. That's not how genetics works. One of Sarima's sisters interrupts their argument and tells them that a caravan is arriving, and then Sarima tells Elphie the saddest thing ever. They've never stopped thinking their father is going to come back, said Sarima under her breath to Elphaba. This excitement is a hope for him, though they don't remember it. 4 asks the kids where Liir is. Liir just says he was playing with us earlier, maybe he fell asleep, and Manek just kind of ignores that, and he says, let's go set a bonfire and smoke the travelers a hello. So when the caravan arrives, who should arrive but Nanny? And Elphie is overjoyed to see Nanny, and Sarima agrees to have Nanny over for dinner. Nanny explains how she tracked Elphaba down at the Monterey. She learned that Elphie was at the Monterey through Crope, as Abed.
Cool.
Told her that she was the one who was looking after Tibbet when he was dying at the Monterey. And so she goes to the Monterey, and then the Monterey told Nanny that Elphie had left and headed to Kiamo Ko. Now, during dinner, the sisters are absolutely desperate for some Oz tea. They need TikTok. And Nanny drops the real shit about what the wizard's been up to. Well, our redoubtable wizard has crowned himself emperor, said Nanny. Did you know that? They hadn't heard. By whose authority? Asks 5, scoffing. And furthermore, emperor over what? She is fucking incensed, and it's amazing. Yes, girl. Please go scorched earth. But you know what? Maybe that's what she needs, is to get this woman out, get this girl out of Kiamo Ko so that she can organize in the Emerald City, and then maybe run for office, and then maybe she can be Oz's own Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, and then maybe Sarima can raise her own damn kids for once. So the next day, everyone is hanging out and chit-chatting when Nor and Irji come rushing in with bad news. They found Liir in the Fishwell, and they're worried he might be dead. They explain that they found him because they were passing the Fishwell with Chistery when he wrinkled his nose, and then why? So out of curiosity, Nor and Irji decided to remove the cover of the Fishwell and they saw a patch of human skin in there, and they decided to run and go get the adult. Chaos ensues as everyone runs downstairs to get Liir out of the Fishwell, and Manek, who's curious about the commotion, goes to see what's up. The fucking little psychopath kid says, "Oh, is that where he was? You know, he wanted to go down in that Fishwell once." Fucking little psychopath freak! Do something about your kid, Sarima! Nanny and Elphie manage to revive Liir, and they wrap him up and prepare him to put him to bed when they discover he hasn't had a proper bed, and he offers to let him sleep in their room, and she calls them all barbarian rude. You're a guest in their house, Nanny. Spoiler alerts for the next book, some of which Liir does have memories of Elphaba rocking him to sleep as a baby. Probably the type of baby that would not go to sleep unless he was held or being rocked. That's how my youngest son was, and as a baby, he would never let me put him down. He would literally sleep in my arms, and if I would have to wait till he was good and asleep, and then if he wasn't, I'd put him down and he'd scream his head off. My son's 4 and he still wants someone to lie down with him when he goes to sleep, and I think Liir might be the same way. He might be wanting to hang out with the older kids, so he keeps wanting to. He probably just won't be able to go to sleep with them. Maybe he doesn't want his mom to be putting him to bed. But Sarima is a bitch. Instead of dealing with her psychopath of a child, she chooses to lecture Elphaba instead and passes the whole thing off as boys being boys. Bitch, your fucking kid tried to drown her kid. He's 11, Liir is 6. He's a much bigger kid. The lecture turns to Sarima telling Elphie about all the Archiki coming of age / initiation rites into the tribe, and the ritual involves sending preteens out into the wilderness in the middle of the night with a musical instrument, and the spirits are supposed to help them survive. She explains that it has to do with hot and cold anger, and hot anger is what the men folk need to hunt and shit, and it's useful for sex, to which Elphie responds, "I know," outing herself as Fiyero's lover. Oops. We learned when Liir was coming to, he told Sarima and Elphie that a goldfish told him that he's Fiyero's son, and Nor, Idri, and Manek are his siblings. Sarima had looked at Elphaba, and Elphaba thought the hour of her liberation was at hand at last. How silly of the boy. He's delusional, Sarima said at last. The idea of Fiyero being his father. Fiyero didn't have an ounce of fat on his body, and look at the boy. Under the terms of her welcome, Elphaba could not prod Sarima to change her mind, but she stared at her hostess, willing her to accept facts, but she wouldn't. "And whoever might his mother be?" Sarima said blandly, touching the hem of her skirt softly. "It's preposterous beyond words." For the first time, Elphie wished that Liir had at least an undertone of green in his skin. Sarima is in such hard denial. Could possibly be Liir's father because Fiyero wasn't fat. God damn it. Let's body shame a 6-year-old instead of just asking the person in front of you, "Hey, were you banging my husband?"
I said a bang, bang, bangity bang. I said a bang, bang, bangity bang.
Bang, bang, bang.
Is this his kid? The answer would be yes. Also, Fiyero could have been a bit of a tubby kid and became long and lean once he went through puberty, but Liir is still several years away from puberty. Denial, thy name is Sarima. So Elphie's mulling over parenthood, and Nanny confronts her about Liir, and she doesn't fully admit to everything. She just simply says she was at the Montreat in a comatose state. I don't think she actually means comatose. I think what she means is catatonic. A coma is a very specific medical state, and she's talking about being unresponsive but still conscious. And we know that Elphie definitely checked out emotionally after Fiyero's death, and it seems like just from descriptions earlier in the book that she has some hazy recollections of this time. I really think that it was probably either too early for her to, take an Oz pregnancy test, or she just had no emotional capacity to think about things like missing a period, and after months of unresponsiveness, she would go into labor and then, shocked by the intensity of the pen, be completely unprepared for what was happening. And the Montreat staff, as we saw with that damn bitch who thought Christmas was more important than, helping somebody in crisis. I don't think the Montreat was equipped to handle this. And look, labor and delivery are terrifying when you know what's coming. It's scary, painful, messy, and it never goes to add grief, dissociation, and isolation. And it's plausible that she checked out until it was over. I can relate. My second son was born at 37 weeks, which is technically to term. It's considered early term, I guess, which means that you can go into labor anytime between 37 and 41 weeks, so it's term. But I developed preeclampsia, and ultimately I required an emergency C-section. And I remember being in labor, and my contractions were so intense that the anesthesiologist had to just keep dosing me with pain meds until I was hot. I vaguely remember kind of like being in the OR, and I would shut my eyes and like I would see all these like wild colors and like all the pretty colors. I don't really remember much after that. I remember waking up later in the hospital room with my son. Also, I was alone for 4 days because of COVID restrictions and because my son was a little bit earlier than expected. We didn't really have anybody to watch our dog or watch our other son. And let's be real, once the baby is born, postpartum period is hell on earth too, because your hormones significantly drop, and then you endure weeks of bleeding while your body flushes out the tissue it used to nurture your baby for 40 weeks. And on top of that, newborns are basically vampires. They don't know the difference between night and day. So until they learn the difference between night and day, you're up all night and you're tired. And the only thing a little tiny baby does is eat, sleep, and poop, and then sometimes barf, and sometimes they do it all at once. That's the hardest time of being a parent, is when your kid is first born, and that's hard even when you have support. Elphie would have been alone, and she was already overwhelmed and grieving, so it's really entirely plausible that she dissociated. Elphaba obviously entered the Monterey months before she gave birth and didn't know she was pregnant. Probably went into labor not knowing she was pregnant, scared as fuck. And the Monterey's a shit institution, so I don't think that they were quite equipped to handle a postpartum mother. Don't think anybody even bothered to watch the baby so the girl could sleep. So Elphie tells Nanny that while she was at the Monterey, she helped care for orphaned kids, and Liir would be among them. Really found a clever way to take care of her baby during the day, at least. So Nanny asks Elphaba if she has any parental feelings for Liir, and she just says, I only have obligations to myself. Such a non-answer. But like in Elphie speak, that means yes, because Elphie's really the type of person that if she didn't, she would just flat out say so. She doesn't have any qualms about that. There's obviously reasons why she probably couldn't outright tell people that, because societal norms, they don't really treat single mothers as well. Can't let people know that women had sex. What should we do about that? Oh no. Nanny's just all, ugh. I was hoping I wouldn't have to raise another generation of Throp kids, but she helps Elphie out anyways and becomes Liir's de facto nanny along with the rest of the kids. Maybe this means Sarima's shitty sisters can get a break from helping her raise the kids for a hot minute. Manek dies due to having a meeting with the business end of an icicle after Elphie glared at it a little too long, silently cursing the little psychopath for trying to drown her child. After Manek's unfortunate incident with the rogue icicle, the house is back in active mourning, and it stinks up the household as opposed to just the general stale stench of mourning that's just permanently throughout the house. So.
One eternity later.
One day, Nora's outside playing alone, and she spots some Gale Force soldiers near the house. And they come to the castle to ask for shelter, and Elphie says, fuck no, because girlfriend knows her Third Amendment rights. Just as a reminder, the Third Amendment of the Constitution of the United States of America says, no soldiers shall in time of peace be quartered in any house without the consent of the owner, nor in a time of war, but in a manner to be prescribed by law. I don't give a shit if this is Oz. They're under no obligation to host those soldiers. Elphie knows her rights. Sarima is more interested in playing hostess, and all of Elphie's protests fall on deaf ears. And the commander of this outfit is a dude named Cherry Stone, and he gives some bullshit excuses why the wizard ordered them there. I don't know, training exercise or whatever. Like, okay, fucker, why don't you just provide me with a legal document from the wizard that says you're allowed to be here? Okay. Sarima's sisters are so desperate for her to get married again so that they can leave, so they start trying to hook Cherrystone up with Sarima. Ew. Elphie shows she does have maternal instincts. When Liir starts wanting to tag along with the soldiers, Elphie says do not fucking do that, but he doesn't listen. The soldiers are also creepy as fuck with young Nor, who's probably 10 by this point. She's too young to understand that these men are creepy as fuck, and these men, their intentions are yuck. Her mother is doing a shit job at teaching her what grooming is. She's way too busy being in denial and making her sisters homeschool her kids. One day, Nora is out playing and she decides to play with Elphie's broom that she brought with her from the Monterey when it starts to fly. Flies up to a window where Elphie and Nanny see her and immediately tell her to get off of it. Elphie's curiosity is piqued, so she decides to give it a try for herself. And after some practices and some false starts, she finally gets it to fly. So Elphie then receives a letter from Frex, and Frex tells her that Munchkinland has seceded from Greater Oz and is now an independent political entity. Nessa Rose took the title of Eminence, and Frex wants to convince Elphie to take the job for herself, since as the oldest daughter, it's her birthright. Elphie decides to pay a visit to the family, and now that she has the broom, she hops on the broom and flies to Munchkinland. She goes to Colwyn Grounds, which is Melina's childhood home, and when she's there, she's greeted by Frex, who tells her that she looks just like her mother. Damn, yeah, those Throp genes are strong, because we know what Elphie looks like, and while Liir doesn't have green skin, he doesn't inherit Fiyero's looks. He's described as having fair skin, dark hair, and green eyes. And in the next book, mild spoiler, but Nanny tells Liir that he looks like he could be Nessa's son, and we know Nessa's not exactly doing any banging anybody. Elphie tells Frex about her life over the past decade and her life at Kiamo Co, and asks her what she's doing, and she's like, "I'm a witch, Daddy," and he's just like, "Oh, that's nice, dear." She leaves out about the part of him being a grandpa. Can't let Frex know that she got pregnant out of wedlock. His fundy ass would have a coronary. He fills her in about Nessa got Munchkinland to secede from Greater Oz, and he reveals that he's hoping Elphie can take an assistant to the Eminent Throp, or whatever Dwight Schrute made up title, so that Elphaba can balance out Nessa's religious fundamentalism. And Elphie's rightfully disappointed. I have always felt had a clearer mind about you. You can help her prepare. You can provide the balance and the support. I always did that, Papa, she said, in childhood and at college. Now I'm told she can stand for herself. She was trying to feel fondness towards her father despite the exhaustion of being commandeered to be second lieutenant once again in service of dear old needy Nessa Rose. She concentrated on her father's concern for the citizens of Munchkinland. Ever a pastoral sensibility his, though rejecting his theology, she adored him for his commitment. Here Elphie is, a 30-year-old woman with a life and a kid of her own, and she's home for 5 minutes, and she's already roped for doing something for the family, because, as we just heard there, in the world according to Frex, the ministry, and by extension Nessa, are more important than whatever Elphie's got going on. Here I was editing, and I just wanted to go deeper into the reasons why I am showing you that in this family, the mission, and therefore, by extension, Nessa Rose, are more important. So case in point, this is Jill Duggar Dillard's memoir. If you don't know who Jill is, she is a member of the Duggar family who had a reality TV show on TLC for a bajillion in 1 year, focusing there on their extremely large family. It's just a fucking circus show. Long story short, the patriarch of that family told them all that their whole reason for doing it was ministry. They went to extremes to protect it, including protecting a pedophile brother, the eldest child, Josh Duggar, who in 2015 it came out from a FOIA report that he had sexually assaulted 5 girls, including 4 of his sisters and 1 outside. And after many years of bullshit, Jill left the TV show and went back and forth with her father for many years, trying to get paid and so on and so forth. So I just want to read you a passage of this book. This is from Counting the Cost, Jill's memoir. This is pages 211 to 212. My voice trailed off as I tried to find the right words, but Pops wasn't listening to me. He had his own list of things he wanted to talk about. You sent me a text message, Jill. You said I was verbally abusing you. I was so offended by that too. You know in your heart that's not right. Are you going to apologize for that now? I was nervous now. I remembered the message, remembered sending it in the hope that it might wake Pops up to how bad I felt things had gotten, and to maybe wake him up, give us a little space and let things calm down. I'd written about not wanting to be verbally abused, which is exactly how I felt at this time. I felt it in El Salvador as well. I wasn't sure how I could apologize for that. I glanced at Derek as I remained speechless. Pops must have sensed what I was thinking because he suddenly stood up. "You're not going to apologize? Really?" His voice was loud. There was an edge to it I'd rarely heard. The moderator looked pale and was stuck on. Derek tensed, and I could feel him getting ready to step in. I squeezed his hand, hoping he'd get the message. "Hold back. Be quiet. Do not let things get any worse. Do not let this get any worse than it already is." We were sitting in a horseshoe formation, the moderator in the middle, with the Dillards and the Duggards facing each other on the opposite couches. Pops took a step toward closing the gap. It wasn't a gesture of reconciliation. It was an act of aggression. He towered over me, his whole body fueled with anger, my face flushed red, my eyes filled with tears. Then there was a long, awful silence that I wanted to fill but couldn't yet. Derek's hand was shaking in mine, and I squeezed as hard as I ever had, desperate for him to hold his tongue. "You know why you're crying, don't you? Your conscience is talking to you. That's why." Pop's voice was so loud in my ears, his words were like blows. I instinctively tried to protect myself and block. I curled up on my seat, trying to find safety in some kind of fetal position. "You're guilty." Pops was yelling, stabbing his finger at me, standing right over me. Mom started crying. Derek tried to speak, but I pulled him back. "Do you want to know why I'm crying?" My voice was cracked, my eyes burned. "It's that you think I'm some kind of horrible person just because I wear pants, have a nose ring, and yet you see that girl outside and praise her. That's why I'm crying, Daddy. I'm evolving and changing, just like that girl out there, but you can't see it. You treat me like a prodigal who's turned her back on you. You treat me worse than my pedophile brother." See, Elphie confronts him about this bullshit, and she brings up the shoes that he gave Nessa. They're the literal embodiment of Frex and his favoritism, and he doesn't even deny it. "You've heard of my precious shoes. I brought them from a decrepit crone, and then I retooled them for Nessa with my own hands, using skills in glass and metal I had once learned from Turtleheart. I made them to give her a sense of beauty, but I didn't expect them to be enchanted by someone else. I'm not sorry they are. Nessa never thinks she needs no one to help her stand or govern. She listens less than ever in some ways. I think those shoes are dangerous. I wish you'd made them for me, Papa," she said in a quiet voice. "You didn't need them. You had your voice, your intensity, even your cruelty as armor." "My cruelty?" she reared back. "Oh, you were a fiendish little thing. But so what? Children outgrow into and out of themselves. You were a terror when you were first around other children. You only calmed down when we began to travel and you got to hold the baby. It was Nessa Rose who tamed you, you know. You have to thank her. She was holy and blessed even from the day she was born. Even as an infant, she soothed you in your wildness with her obvious need. You don't remember that, I suppose." Elphie wasn't able to remember. She wasn't able to think about all that. He thinks that the shoes are going to Nessa's head or some shit, and I don't know. It's like, you can't let a woman get ideas. Not that, she's a governmental head of state or anything. Frex is just the fucking worst. It's just really fucking unfortunate that he's just said, "Oh, you don't need them because you can handle yourself," unlike Nessa, who's just a delicate little flower and all. After this, Elphie and Nessa finally reunite for the first time in a decade. Nessa isn't shocked to see her. In fact, if anything, she's just more pissed that Frex is trying to rope Elphie into being her bitch. And she's more annoyed at Elphie for running away all those years ago. "You know we thought you died," said Nessa Rose. "Drape that shawl around my shoulders and fix it with a pin, will you, so I needn't call a maid? I mean, that awful, awful time when you left me alone in Shiz. I'm still furious with you about it. I just remembered." She curled her lip prettily. Elphaba was glad to see she possessed at least a residual sense of humor. Nessa Rose then goes off about how she had to deal with Madame Morrible for 2 years, and after Elphie left, sure, Glinda helped a little, but then she graduated, and who was left? Just Nessa and her faith to help her get through. And Elphie's basically like, yeah, good for you. So later, Elphie tags along with Nessa. She goes about her day as this new CEO of the Michael Scott Munchkinland paper company. Nessa's a huge fucking bitch. She meets with a local woman who tells Nessa that she wants to punish a local woodcutter by... Nessa is a huge bitch. She meets a local woman who tells Nessa that she wants to punish a local woodcutter for running off with her maid. She wants Nessa to bewitch the man, because that will definitely convince your maid to come back and work for you. Much to Elphie's shock and horror, Nessa actually agrees to do this. She justifies her actions with some weak-ass excuse saying it's for the unnamed god or whatever. Yeah, Nessa is just a fucking raging hypocrite on a power trip. Rules for thee and not for me. The lady offers Nessa a sheep and a cow as payment, and it's here that Elphie is dismayed to learn that the animals are now just functioning as chattel slavery. Elphie makes up her mind that she wants to free the animals, so she sneaks into the barn while Nessa's back is turned. However, the animals aren't really jumping at the bit to trust Elphie. She repeatedly tries to convince them that she's on her side, but the cow just dismisses her and the sheep just stays mute. And it's understandable since they've been conscripted for ritual slaughter and all. Elphie doesn't believe it. She says Nessa's a strict unionist and she doesn't do blood sacrifice. Again, they don't believe her, and the cow finally leaves when Elphie just opens the pen door for her to leave. So later, while Nessa is doing some official business, Elphie spends some more time catching up with Frex, and he will just not fucking let the idea of her being at the helm of Munchkinland instead of her sister go. He explains that, again, he wrote Elphie in hopes that she would take over the position and that Nessa would abdicate. He ironically thinks that Nessa's religious scrupulosity is what makes her an unfit leader. Elphie tells Frex again that she declined that position in the family, but even then, he will not take no for an answer. He just tries a slightly different angle by telling her that she's the most capable between herself, Nessa, and Shell. Yeah, who's at fault for that, buddy? You're the one who made your oldest daughter become the de facto parent for your other two kids while you dragged your family all over creation. Oz, Florida, and Quadling country for a million years. And the worst part, he doesn't even bother trying to deny it. Have you known Nessa to have an adult bond with anyone other than the unnamed god? You're one to talk, she said. You had your wife and your children, but they came lower on the order of priorities than Quadlings waiting to be converted. I did what had to be done, he said rigidly. I won't be lectured by my daughter. Well, I won't be lectured by you about my everlasting duty to Nessie. I gave her my childhood. I got her going at shiz. She's made her life the way she wants it, and she still has choice and free will, even now. And so do her subjects, who can depose her and cut off her head if her prayers get in the way. She is a rather powerful woman, Frex said sadly. Elphie glanced sideways at him, and for the first time she saw him as feckless, the kind of old man that Irji, if he survived, would grow up to be, constantly pawing at the edge of events, reacting instead of acting, mourning the past, and praying for the future instead of stirring up the present. He doesn't even bother denying it. And you know what? It's at this moment that Frex chooses to tell his daughter about Turtle Heart, about how Frex and Melina shared him. Gross. Just what every girl wants to hear, a monologue about her parents' sex life.
Ew, no, David.
Elphie asks him straight up if Nessa's his biological child, and he's just like,
Allow me to present Man Not Caring.
Even after all this bullshit, Elphie is still the ever-dutiful daughter who loves her father, and she even tries to convince him to come back to Kiamo with her, but he declines. He can't leave Nessa, even if she isn't biologically his. Yet no wonder Elphie struggles so much with trying to show Liir that she loves him in the way that he wants. She's never had a stable example of what that looks like. Generational trauma. Before Elphie leaves, she meets back up with Nessa, and Nessa tries to rope her into being the assistant to the regional manager at the Michael Scott Dunder Mifflin Munchkinland paper company, and Elphie declines. Nessa seems to think that telling Elphie she was raised for a life of service will make Elphie want to stay. I'm not sure that will really work. Elphie tries to bring up the time when Madame Morrible hypnotized the sisters and Glinda to rope her into her fascist pyramid scheme. Nessa denies that this ever happened and just dismisses her. Elphie then essentially says, fine bitch, be that way. I'm not going to babysit you. Have fun. They say goodbye, and then Nessa tells Elphie that she'll pray for her. And Elphie responds with, and I shall wait for your shoes.
Boom. Roasted.
Elphie flies back to Kiamo, but when she arrives, she's just greeted with the creepy opening scene of a true crime documentary.
Oh, that's terrible.
The back door is wide open, and at first she thinks maybe everybody's just outside, but the house is too quiet. She heads inside and she finds Nanny just freaking the fuck out, and Nanny immediately starts unloading on Elphaba, just screaming at her that she left everybody to be murdered. Elphie's like, wait, what the fuck are you talking about? And Nanny explains, everyone in the house is gone. The soldiers that were illegally occupying the property finished up whatever bullshit training exercise they were allegedly doing, and Cherry Stone showed up under the guise of protection and basically kidnapped the whole family. Protection my ass. And of course he waited till Elphaba was out of town because he's a cowardly little chicken shit who knew that he was in the wrong, and he didn't want to deal with Elphaba standing up for her rights and the rights of everyone else in the house. Now, they initially left Liir behind, but then they scooped him up a few days later. Nanny tells Elphaba that the citizens of the neighboring town, Red Windmill, asked Nanny if she could tell Elphaba to get Sarima and company back. Killjoy and Chistery at least are safe, but this doesn't make Elphie feel any better, and she's stressed because Liir's gone and she won't be able to get forgiveness from Sarima. Elphie clenched her fists and tried to keep from striking herself. Liir gone too? She said. I came here to make my apologies to Sarima, and I lost Liir in the bargain. Am I good for nothing in this life? Kiamo was deathly still, except for Nanny's labored breathing as she took her catnap in the rocking chair. Killjoy thumped his tail on the floor, happy to see his mistress. The sky was broad and hopeless beyond the windows. Part 5. The Murder in Its Afterlife. It's 8 years later, and we do know that, thankfully, Cherrystone and his goons returned Liir, albeit in an unceremonious fashion. They didn't know that he was Fiyero's kid, and that's what saved him. Oh, and Nessa was dead. A house dropped on her head and killed her. Elphie gets word of this through a letter from her brother Shell. In my head, the letter reads something like this. Hey, Elphie, I hope you're good. Listen, Nessa is dead. There was a tornado and a house. It's a long story. Anyways, there's a funeral in a couple weeks on the 9th. Okay, bye. Ciao. Elphie needs to arrange to get out of town for the funeral, and Liir is now 14 and a teenager with attitude, and he's mad that he can't go to the funeral. He throws a teenage temper tantrum and threatens to tell Nanny Nessa is dead. Elphaba tells him not to, but of course, he's a teenager. So he goes ahead and tells her, even though his mother told him explicitly not to. Nanny, of course, becomes upset at this news, and she cries a little, and then she compares Liir to Nessa, which, rude. Nessa is an uptight religious fundamentalist, and Liir is a little puppy dog of a boy, much like his father Fiyero, but with a touch of sarcasm that's a signature Throp trait. We know that Nessa was not well liked by her constituents, and so much so that she gained the nickname of Wicked Witch of the East. So once Elphie makes it to Colwyn Ground, she learns that since Nessa is dead, the Eminence position is now dissolved, and Elphie feels a little guilty because she hopes it will be good for the citizens of Munchkinland, but it's her family legacy, and she doesn't feel like she should feel that way. So at Colwyn Grounds, Elphie finds Frex distraught over the loss of Nessa, and Shell has fucked off to wherever, leaving all the responsibility of handling funeral arrangements and comforting their father to Elphie. And Frex still sucks. He tells Elphie about the mirror that she had as a kid and how Turtleheart gave it to her. And then he insults her. "You are my fault," he said. Despite his words, he was somehow pinning blame on her instead of himself, though she still wasn't clever enough to see how this was done. "For what I had failed to do, you were born to plague me. But don't worry yourself about it now," he's added. "That's all long ago." "And Nessa Rose?" she asked. "How do the weights and balances of shame and guilt account for her?" "She is a portrait of the lax morals of your mother," Frex said calmly. "And that's why you could love her so much," said the witch, "because her human frailty wasn't your fault." God, this man is so goddamn selfish. He just cannot fucking help himself. He clearly doesn't view his children as individual people with hopes and dreams and problems of their own. he views them as extensions of
himself.
and you can see that's what he meant when he said that Nessa was a portrait of the lax morals of their mother. Appreciate it. Luckily, Glinda shows up to break up the tension, and Elphie is ecstatic to see Glinda again, and they hug. She tells Glinda she's wearing a stupid outfit, and whatever. Glinda replies with, "When in the provinces?" So they chat a bit about the day that Nessa died, and Glinda happened to be on scene the day that Nessa was murdered. I guess, her beard husband is rich as fuck and she was trying to spend his money on charity. She tells Elphie the house that dropped on Nessa's head was occupied by a little girl called Dorothy. And Elphaba's like, "Oh, nice of my shitty-ass brother not to tell me that." Glinda goes on some more about Dorothy and how she sent her away, which surprises Elphie. She said, she thought she'd see her there, but Glinda's just being a goddamn bitch and doesn't fucking get it. She tries to gaslight Elphie into thinking she's being paranoid and that she's gonna go after the poor little girl. Yeah, bitch, she never said anything like that. Glinda can be so infuriatingly stupid sometimes. Elphie tries to steer the topic of conversation to Fiyero. She tries to convince to Glinda about her affair with him in kind of a roundabout fashion by telling Glinda that Sarima suspected her of having an affair with Glinda doesn't really get what Elphie's trying to tell her. "My dear," Glinda turned yellow-pink. She said, "I was fond of Fiyero. He was a good man and a fine statesman." "My dear, she said, "I was fond of Fiyero, and he was a good man and a fine statesman. But among other things, you will remember he was dark-skinned. Even if I took up dalliances, an inclination I believe rarely benefits anyone. You are once again being suspicious and cranky to suspect me and Fiyero. Dia." And the witch realized sinkingly that this was of course true. The ugly skill at snobbery had returned to Glinda in her middle years. But for her part, Glinda had no real inkling that the witch was implicating herself as Fiyero's adulterous lover. Yeah. But to be fair, Glinda's just babbling still because she's still obsessed with Elphie, because, she's still got a major crush on Elphie, and Elphie's mere presence means that Glinda becomes flustered and verbal diarrhea ensues. Glinda was too fussed to listen that closely. The witch, in fact, alarmed her a little. It was not just the novelty of seeing her again, but the strange charisma Elphaba possessed, which had always put Glinda in the shade. And there was also the thrill, basis indeterminable, which made Glinda shy and caused her to rush her words and to speak in a false high voice like an adolescent. How quickly you could be thrown back into the terrible uncertainty of your youth. Yeah, I think that's what they call on How I Met Your Mother, revertigo. For when she chose to remember her youth at all, she could scarcely dredge up an ounce of recollection about that daring meeting with the wizard. She could recall far more clearly how she and Elphaba had shared a bed on the road to the Emerald City, how brave that made her feel, and how vulnerable too. Elphie then brings up Madame Morrible and how she tried to rope her, Nessa, and Glinda into that fascist pyramid scheme with the wizard. Glinda does remember their meeting, but unlike Nessa, she doesn't deny or dismiss Elphie's feelings. She mostly just tells Elphaba that Madame Morrible was the worst, and she probably saw the fucking future wrong, which is Glinda speak for Madame Morrible was a bitch and fuck her. Elphie's still spiraling, and she tells Glinda that she really just feels like she's always being used by someone else. "I've always felt like a pawn," said the witch. "My skin color's been a curse. My missionary parents made me sober and intense. My school days brought me up against political crimes, against animals. My love life imploded, and my lover died. If I had any life's work of my own, I haven't found it yet, except in animal husbandry, if you could call it that. I'm no pawn," Glinda said. I take all the credit in my world for my own foolishness. Good gracious, dear. All of life is a spell. You know that. But you do have some choice." Girl, she wants a hug. Just give her a hug and let her cry. That's what she needs. But that's not what happens. Glinda confesses to sending Dorothy to see the wizard, which Elphie thinks is a stupid idea, and yeah, it is. Glinda still hasn't realized that he's the fucking worst. Either that or she doesn't care. I'm not sure which one's worse. Then Glinda drops a nuclear bomb and tells Elphie that she gave Dorothy Nessa's shoes, and Elphie is rightfully pissed. She thinks she's entitled to do what she wants with the shoes, even though Elphie is clearly in pain and grieving. She thinks that since she helped Nessa for like another year or whatever at Shiz, that she's entitled to do what she wants with the shoes. Honey, 1 year of helping Nessa out is not the same 14, 16 years of parentification before that. The witch said, Glinda, if those shoes fall into the hands of the wizard, he'll use them somehow in a maneuver to re-annex Munchkinland. By now they have too much significance to Munchkinlanders. The wizard mustn't have those shoes. Glinda reached out and touched the witch's elbow. They won't make your father love you any better, she said. And that's that. Bitch, be so fucking for real right now. You had no right to say that. It's clear she thinks she's being nice, but Glinda's just being cruel and unnecessary. So after Nessa's funeral, an emissary of the wizard approaches Elphie to get an audience with her and her father. Elphaba refuses at first, but she relents when the emissary explains that the wizard has questions, and if she refuses, he could make the lives of her loved ones miserable. Does anybody in this universe understand that this is not the time or the place for your bullshit?
Oh my god. Time and place.
Seriously. Now, because he made a threat, Elphie now has to meet with the wizard. Yeah, seriously, this guy sucks so fucking hard. So Elphie goes to meet the wizard, Grifty McGrifterson, because, you know what, I think that's a fitting name for him, and he's already waiting for her. He tries doing the polite chit-chat thing, but Elphie isn't having it, and she demands that he tell her what he wants. He tells her that he wants Munchkinland under his control, and he wants to know if Elphaba is going to take up the positions of Emazance now that Nessa's gone. Since Glinda put her nose in other people's business and gave Nessa's enchanted shoes to Dorothy, they no longer present a threat to him, and he uses that as leverage over Elphie, conveniently opening the door for war crimes. Great job, Glinda. Speaking of war crimes, Grifty McGrifterson admits to using the town of Red Windmill, the town near Kiamo, as a tool of surveillance, stationing his soldiers there. Elphaba is getting really, really animated now. Now, she's desperate to know if Sarima and the family are still alive. To try to strike a bargain with him, she offers up a page of the Grimmerie that she took with her. Old Grifty McWarcrimes has another trick up his sleeve. He brings out Nor, who is not in good shape. Elphie gives him the page and he looks at them and he's all, oh yeah, this is why I came to Oz in the first place. Elphie's like, what now? So Grifty McWarcrimes Grifterson goes on to explain that he didn't want to be a ruler, but he just wanted to be a good boy and get the Grimmerie, and he just fell into being a ruler or something like that. Sure, keep telling yourself that, asshole. So Elphie tells him that she met him before, and he starts talking about Madame Morrible. He's like, oh yeah! Morrible, that crazy bitch. Oh, by the way, she told me that you were banging that sexy prince with the diamond tattoos and had you followed. Ha 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 ha. Yeah, hilarious. Stalking and war crimes. He leaves after that saying he'll send a messenger. Elphie leaves Colwyn Grounds a few days later, and on her way out she runs into Glinda again, but Elphie just gives her, Glinda calls for her, but Elphaba just gives her the cold shoulder, and spoiler alert, it's the last time they ever see each other. But before she can head home, Elphie needs to track down the shoes to mitigate the wizard's threat. This is all due to Glinda sticking her nose in where it doesn't belong. Through some sleuthing skills, she discovers that Dorothy and co. stayed the night at none other than her old buddy Box house. She finds his house, and again, we know that he's married to one of the fashion club members, Milla. They also have a shit ton of kids. They've been busy. Elphie gets straight to the point and asks him about Dorothy. He doesn't have much to say, but to say that she was there and she left. Bach and Elphie then start to talk about college until Milla sees that it's kind of bumming Elphie out, so she tries to change the subject. Bach still wants to talk about the good old days, I guess. He tells her that his days at Shiz were the high point of his life. But you're what, 38, 39, and college was 15, 20 years ago? You've gotten married, had a family, none of that was better than college? And you're going to say that in front of your wife. Got it. The conversation once again pivots to Dorothy, and Bach is just sharing unnecessary details that Dorothy told him, the meaning of her name, the fact that Teddy Roosevelt is president. So we know that this takes place sometime between September 14th, 1901 and March 4th, 1909. But like, no one fucking cares, especially Elphie. She doesn't care who the president of the United States is at this moment in time, and not so sure she'd be a Roosevelt fan, being that he was an avid hunter despite him setting up the national park system, laying the groundwork for what would become the FDA, despite being a fervent capitalist, breaking up monopolies. Where was I? Oh yeah. Elphie's annoyed by Baccamilla, so she heads out, and she's still stewing in her anger, so she decides to go to Shiz University and pay a visit to Madame Morrible. She gets to Crage Hall to discover that the new head of Crage Hall is not Madame Morrible, but some new lady. Elphie manages to sneak in to see the old bitch. When she gets in to see Madame Morrible, she's basically dead, if not dead already. I mean, she's just a waxy gray corpse in a bed that smells like a fish. Kind of appropriate, since Glinda always thought she looked like a fish. Appropriate, but disgusting. Elphie spies a trophy that says, "In appreciation of everything you have done," and proceeds to grab it and beat the shit out of Madame Morrible. We don't appreciate what Morrible has done, thank you very much. Elphie leaves, and then she tracks down her old frenemy, Avric. Avric pretends that he doesn't remember her at first, but eventually he admits that he does. He mentions that the Clock of the Time Dragon is in town, and he's all like, "Oh hey, yeah, don't you remember when we went to the philosophy club?" Elphie's like, "Yeah, no, we didn't go to the philosophy club together." Then he's like, "Oh, yeah, that's right, you didn't." She tells him that she killed Madame Morrible, and he's like, "Okay, cool, yeah. When you ran away, she gathered us all together to be lectured about you, girl." So the TLDR is Avric tells Elphaba that after she ran away, after she and Glinda met the wizard, Madame Morrible and Wizard pulled a Justin Baldoni stunt and came up with a strategy to preemptively smear Elphaba's name before she could have a chance to speak out. An Ozian Astro-Turfing campaign against a 20-year-old. Lovely. Morrible told all of Elphaba's friends, including Glinda, how she was spiky and fringe and how she was going to recruit them into, I don't know. Avric tells Elphie that Glinda was devastated by Elphaba's leaving and she spiraled really hard. Elphie stays for dinner, and she and Avric debate about the nature of good and evil. Avric's wife is there, and she's none too pleased to hear about Madame Morrible. Someone needs to tell her what a piece of shit Madame Morrible was, and, mention the stalking, the war crimes, the Astro-Turfing, all that shit. Later, Elphie's drunk and she's wandering around, and when she comes across the Clock of the Time Dragon just in a field somewhere with its dwarf proprietor, who we'll just call Mr. Boss, she asks him about Yackle, who's the weird fucking lady who's basically been stalking her for a reason. Elphie, again, who's wasted, thinks that it might have been Yackle that she killed. Oh, if only. That would have saved a lot of bullshit in future books. But that bitch is unkillable. Mr. Botts then mentions the Grimmerie to Elphie, the mention of which freaks her the fuck out, and he proceeds to tell her that she's a product of this world and the other world. Elphie's like, what do you mean? Mr. Boss goes to explain. It's kind of like how in The Flash, that the Flash takes place on is Earth 1, and Supergirl, Kara Zor-El Danvers' Earth is Earth 38, and then there's Eobard Thawne, and then there's the Reverse Flash and all that, and Elphie's immediately like, the fuck? Yeah, I didn't know I lived in a CW DC Arrowverse show. I'm very confused right now. So she asks her to show him what he's talking about, and she asks him to show her what he is talking about, and he obliges and starts up the Time Dragon clock. It gives her a 3-act play with the puppets. We've gone full Dark Crystal type shit. Act 1, St. Elphaba of the Waterfall disappearing behind said waterfall. Act 2 is Elphie's conception. Because let's layer more trauma on this story, why don't we? It shows Melina as a newlywed, bored and lonely. A traveling salesman knocks on her door, and Melina lets the man in her home. Oh, and the traveling salesman turns out to be none other than old Grifty McWar Crimes Grifterson himself, the Wizard of Oz. Oh, wonderful. He gives Melina a green glass bottle. Yeah, remember that detail? And then the Time Dragon puppet facsimiles of Grifty and Melina are now fucking. Great. Trauma for everyone. Then it shows him in his balloon. Act 3 doesn't exist. Instead, Mr. Boss just hands Elphie the mirror that she got from Turtle Heart as a kid. Thought she'd lost it in between all her moves between Kiamo Co. and the Monterey and Emerald City. It's just a mirror sex tape of Elphie and Fiyero. Not like that's gonna traumatize Liir later on, seeing his parents conceive him. Nope. I mean, if Oz really did have trash reality TV, Elphaba could get her own trash reality TV show a la Kim Kardashian. What would it be? Keeping Up with the Throps. So Elphie then leaves the area, and then she makes another stop at Box House, and she tells him about Madame Morrible, and he responds with, okay, and the point of that was, Elphie's clearly spiraling and box sucks, so she flies back to Kiamo Co. She gets home, but she's still focused on the shoes, but she's happy to be home with Liir and Nanny. Elphie girl, I'm going to stop you right here. Please do not do anything else. Just raise your son, be happy, leave it all here. But alas, that's not what happens. Later, Elphaba's trying to get to sleep, so she takes a concoction from the green bottle. The label's torn off. It winds up giving Elphie nightmares, so she makes a sleeping potion from Nanny's recipe book instead. Now, a few weeks later, Liir tells Elphie that Dorothy is on her way to see them and to kill them. Fantastic. The child is now dragged into a world she doesn't belong in, thanks to the wizard and Glinda. Liir admits that he wants to meet Dorothy. He reveals that the wizard supposedly offered to grant a wish for her. He lingered at the door and said, "The lion wants courage, the tin man a heart, and the scarecrow brain. Dorothy wants to go home. What do you want? A little peace and quiet?" No, really. She couldn't say forgiveness, not to Liir. She caught herself halfway, and in the end, what came out of her mouth surprised them both. She said, "A soul." He blinked at her. "And you?" she said in a quieter voice. "What do you want, Liir? If the wizard could give you anything. A father." "Oh, you sweet baby angel." Elphie would like to insist that she doesn't love Liir, but you can see that she clearly does love him. She doesn't want him to be hurt, and she doesn't want him to be in pain, so she just kind of shows her love in ways that aren't conventional. So here's an example. Liir becomes upset because he learns that his soldier friend, the soldier friend who told him about Dorothy, was tortured and on the brink of death. And Liir is clearly upset, and he breaks down crying. And later, Elphie takes it upon herself to put the poor soldier out of his misery, all because her baby boy was hurting, even if he's a teenager. Elphie is spiraling, and she convinces herself that the scarecrow in Dorothy's gang of misfits must be Fiyero. She tries to get Killjoy to smell the scarecrow out to see if he's Fiyero, but the poor doggy gets in the way of the Gale Force soldier, and the dog is dead. Rip Killjoy. He was a good boy. Then she sends the crows, and while this is going on, Elphie, who is still convinced that the scarecrow is Fiyero, tells Liir that he might get his wish after all. What? Let me see, said Liir, grabbing the thing. He explained to Nanny because the witch was almost beyond speech now. Well, I guess the scarecrows knows how to scare crows, all right. Wait, he's done? They're not coming back, that's all I'll say, said Liir, glancing at the witch. It could still be him, she said at last, breathing heavily. You might get your wish yet, Liir. My wish? He didn't remember asking for a father, and she didn't bother to reminding him. Nothing had yet suggested to her that the scarecrow wasn't a man in disguise. She would not need forgiveness if Fiyero was not dead. Yeah. So, again, you can't convince me that she doesn't love Liir. She is more excited about him possibly having a father than she is about somehow getting a soul or whatever. So, yeah, Elphie's just spiraling, and girlfriend has not slept in a billion years. Yeah, girl, go to bed or get some therapy or preferably both. So, after some failed attempts to get Nessa's shoes back, Elphie makes Chistry and his monkeys retrieve Dorothy and the lion. They're now forced dinner guests. How fun. Not like that's going to end badly. So when Chistry drops Dorothy and the lion off at the entryway, Elphaba initially stays out of sight, but when she makes her presence known, Dorothy immediately just starts to cling to Elphie, just begging her for forgiveness. Sweetheart, you do not need to ask her for forgiveness. You were pushed in a situation that you had no idea about. Glinda is the one that needs to apologize to Elphie, not you. So anyway, yeah, you need to go home. Somehow. And her earnestness just unnerves Elphie. So they have dinner, and it goes about as well as you'd expect it would go. Dorothy's crying, and then Liir cries, and then Dorothy's dog Toto cries, which sets Elphie off because she's reminded of Killjoy, and she's devastated about losing him. Liir might have been the one to find him on the road, but he was really Elphie's dog. They had a special bond, and Killjoy kept her company through everything, and just reminds me of my dog. I'm gonna get back to this story before I keep crying. So anyway, it's chaos. Everybody's crying. And Nanny grabs a birthday candle because I guess she's confused and she starts singing happy birthday, I guess, not really knowing what's going on. And Elphie's starting to freak the fuck out. And she tells the lion that she helped rescue him once at Shiz. And she promises that she'll save him again, to which the lion just responds, I don't want to be saved. Okay then, sure. Elphie freaks the fuck out on Dorothy, and Liir, who's experiencing his first crush, plants a kiss on Dorothy. Yeah, wrong time, kiddo. So Elphie's annoyed and she drags Dorothy to the tower, and the poor girl is now just being interrogated by the sister of her murder victim, who is spiraling due to lack of sleep. Elphie asks Dorothy why she came to kill her, and Dorothy explains that no, it was the wizard who sent her here to kill her. Girl, you could have just said no. But she just wanted forgiveness. Again, you just could have fucking said no. Elphie's caught off guard, and the next thing she knows, her skirt catches on fire. Dorothy splashes some water on her, put out the fire, and she melts, and now she's dead. Now later, Dorothy returns to the wizard, now having done his bidding, albeit unintentionally. His whole fucking thing was just about the goddamn Grimmerie. And you know what? Spoiler alert for some later books in the series, but he's still hyper obsessed with the fucking thing, and makes somebody cry over it. He cannot fucking help himself. So Dorothy returns to the Emerald City with Elphaba's broom and the green bottle that with the label Miracle partially ripped off, and the wizard recognizes it immediately and realizes, oh, he done fucked up. It may be merely apocryphal, but when the wizard saw the glass bottle, he gasped and clutched his heart. The story is told in so many ways depending on who is doing the telling, and what needs to be heard at that time is a matter of history. However, shortly thereafter, the wizard absconded from the palace. He left in a way he had first arrived, in a hot air balloon. Just a few hours before seditious ministers were led to palace revolt and to hold an execution without trial. As far as anybody knows, he fucked on back home. Unfortunately, he's not gone far. And so that was my recap of the Wicked novel. So not only is this a story about what makes someone wicked, it's about the power structures and who decides who gets to be called that in the first place. Now, the religious angle doesn't get touched on in the musical or the movie, but it is everywhere in the novel, and I just think that is one of the most fascinating parts. So Gregory Maguire really uses the unnamed god and the machinery of the various faiths in Oz to show how faith gets twisted into control and how people mistake purity for goodness and abstinence and obedience for virtue. Frex, Elphie's father, the Monts, even the wizard's government, they all weaponize belief in one thing or another to keep others in line. And Elphaba refuses to play that game. That's why I fucking love her. She won't confess to sins that aren't hers. She won't apologize for existing differently. That's not wickedness, that's autonomy. And it's the same way that women are still policed for their choices. Our bodies, our voices, when we don't perform obedience, we get labeled as difficult, hysterical, and ungrateful, or in Elphaba's case, wicked. So this isn't just a story about magic. This is a story about a woman who chooses honesty over acceptance, integrity over safety. In this novel, we ask, who benefits when a woman is called a witch? I hope you enjoyed that recap. If you're sitting here and you're like, after all that, what was all that? That was a lot, but I need more. What happens to Liir? What happens to Nor? Fear not, my friend. There is more to the story. In 2005, Gregory Maguire continued the series after the musical gained worldwide popularity with 3 more books, a prequel, and a spin-off series. Elphaba's story is finished, but the series will continue with her son Liir in the next book, Son of a Witch, which follows Liir's coming-of-age journey and his journey into becoming a father himself. I decided that I'm going to make it my mission to go over all these books, so I'm working on a recap of Liir's story in Son of a Witch next. Hopefully expect more Wicked content coming from me in the next few months. I appreciate you being here with me. If you could do the usual things like subscribe, comment, I'd appreciate it. Bye. Fiyero from K-Pop Demon Hunters. She really could have been describing Elphie when she said in Golden, hey, because because Elphie was called a problem child because she got too wild. You can tell Mira in K-pop Demon Hunters is dealing with some sort of family trauma, similar to how Elphie's obviously dealing with family trauma. But that's probably another deep dive for another day. You can let me know if you want me to discuss that.